Story a day.
Okay. Shalas. So, yes, I was telling you earlier on.
20
Yesterday, February 11th, 1990.
1990.
The world.
That is how many years from now?
28 years ago.
28 years ago.
The world's longest serving political prisoner walked out a free man. This is how it sounded when Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela walked out holding hands with Winnie as they walked out of Victor Verster prison in Cape Town. Walking slowly into freedom.
Step by step.
27 years. So,
almost 3 decades.
Almost.
So it's 27 years in jail.
Yeah, in jail. 3 different prisons. Robben Island, and then Pollsmoor prison, and then this one, Victor Verster, was like a halfway house.
Victor Verster.
Victor Verster, yes. So, I am sitting in my apartment in Brooklyn, New York on February 11th, 1990. I had graduated from NYU, right? I had finished the December before I had finished. So now I was working, right? But that day, because we had heard the story before, we had heard this man was going to be released, I called in sick. I could not go to work. I wanted to watch these events unfolding on my own. Just see it on my TV.
In Brooklyn,
because I couldn't believe it. A man I had followed. I mean, none of us had ever seen this man since he was imprisoned in 1964 and given the prison number 46664. You know the famous number, right? 46664. It means he was the 466th prisoner in 1964. 46664.
Wow.
So growing up, all we heard about was Mandela the prisoner, Mandela the political prisoner. That's all we heard. No picture had ever been taken of him. No news had ever come out from him. Although there was one time, I think about late 70s, a bunch of journalists from Cape Town and Johannesburg were flown into Robben Island to check out the conditions of the prison, just to report during apartheid. And they went, and one of them just happened to take a picture of this guy in the garden, one of the prisoners in the garden. Click, took a picture. Nobody knew what Mandela was like. Nobody knew it. So he went, he printed it, and then he forgot about it. It was much later on when Mandela came out of prison that guy went back to his film, and he said, "Oh my God, that photo I took back in 79, guess who it was?
Mandela."
And he printed a book called A Prisoner in the Garden.
Wow.
You just see Mandela standing on a hoe, garden hoe, standing on it in the garden, just with a hat. A prisoner in the garden. So anyway, there he is, serving a lifetime from 1964. In the 80s, in the 70s, Soweto erupts. 76, there's the Soweto uprisings because the kids didn't want to be taught in Afrikaans. In the 80s, it's still volatile. I mean, it's crazy pressure. The whole world has blocked out South Africa, sanctions left, right, and center. South Africa is now crawling on its own, just on its own. Finally, pressure mounts. 80s, late 80s. This president comes in called F.W. de Klerk. Very progressive Afrikaner guy. And he said, one of the things I'm going to do is A, disband the ANC, B, released Nelson Mandela. And he vowed to do that from 88, 89. They're negotiating back and forth, ANC wanting this, that, the other. And finally, February 11th, 1990, the man walks out with his wife, holding his wife's hand, raising a clenched, defiant fist. And the world, the very first time, that clip there, they see Nelson Mandela walking out as a 71-year-old man. He had gone in when he was in his early 40s. Came out 71 years old. Wow. Can you imagine how much anger and hate one would have spending almost half your life in jail? And he came out and he was magnanimous and he was full of forgiveness. And he says, look, I'll never forget. But if I don't forgive my prisoner, the person who imprisoned me, then I'll always be in prison. One of his most famous quotes. If I don't forgive that person who imprisoned me, I'll always remain a prisoner.
So he forgave him.
Yeah, and then the white people, when they saw this man who many of them had branded a terrorist for years, many of them fled the country, fled to Europe, to America, to Australia, to New Zealand, all of them taking off, even to Zimbabwe and other African countries. He said, there's no way this so-called terrorist is going to come and rule us now. They were so adamant. But F.W. de Klerk kept his word. They kept his word. And there was a lot of negotiation for the next 3-4 years. Lots of fights. Like 10,000 people died in clashes between Zulu and Xhosa, between whites and black. There were so many clashes, man. But in the end, 1994, they held their first multi-party election. Nelson Mandela emerged as the first black president
of South Africa.
Yes. Unbelievable times. Unbelievable. Now, yes.
That was when he was 74.
1990 plus 3 plus 4. 75.
75.
Can you imagine? So, I was telling you earlier on, the man who held the microphone when Mandela made his first speech in City Hall, Cape Town, was Cyril Ramaphosa. Who was, ANC, staunch ANC youth leader. He's the one who held the microphone. Yesterday, Cyril Ramaphosa, who's the president of the ANC, they have been in deep discussions with the president of South Africa, Jacob Zuma, and they're crafting, along with the ANC top executive, they're crafting an exit strategy for Jacob Zuma. Everybody wants him out. It's time. Everybody's sick and tired. The opinions, they all want him out. But it has to be, well, I guess according to ANC, a graceful exit. It could happen on this very day, February 12th, 2018. Almost 28 years to the day that Mandela came out of prison. Can you imagine?
Wow.
Can you imagine? Cyril could become the next president. And by the way, Mandela really wanted Cyril to become president after him. But he said he was going to serve one term.
Yes.
Cyril was one of his lieutenants. There was Thabo Mbeki, there was Cyril Ramaphosa, there's another guy called Tokyo Seswale.
Tokyo Seswale. Tokyo Seswale.
So Mandela actually wanted
Cyril to be
Cyril. But Cyril was minority. He comes from a minority tribe called the Venda. And he wasn't very popular with the others. So Mandela said, you know what? Let's go with Mbeki for now. And they did.
So Mbeki became president after him.
After Mandela.
But he kept his word and just served one term.
Walked away. Wow. Unbelievable story, man. Unbelievable, man. And today, that same man who held his microphone could become the next president of South Africa.
You can't make this stuff up.
And that's what we call a story a day.